colors, flashlights. Baby, I'm an icon. I'm an icon.
Men are
Baby,
trash.
I'm an icon.
That used to be a triggering statement, but now it's like a political statement, or maybe it's actually just facts, and some of us have known it from the beginning. But now we're discussing, why is that so relevant now? Because we're about to talk about masculine fragility. And I hope I'm saying that right, because my accent do be accenting sometimes, but I'm just British by paper, okay? Welcome to Talk to Trish, and I'm Trish Balusa, your host. I am a host, I am a social activist, I am a feminist, I am a mother, I am everything amazing, and most importantly, I am powerful enough to have reversed racism. So, before we start, I just want to take a second to thank my wonderful sponsors. As you can see, the colours are colouring. It's giving Congolese, it's giving Brixton, because we are in Mike Mojo Studios, who is funded by LITC. I also want to take a second to thank my drinking sponsors, Dark Side Rum Punch. It's got that kick to it, that Caribbean kick to it, just how I like them. So we're going to be getting good because we're drinking and we're talking. I'm drinking rum. So anyway, let me not get started. So we were talking about, serious Trish, we're talking about masculine fragility. What does that mean? I guess in my own interpretation, I'd have to say that really is ego. Is the male ego, or what is presented as a male ego nowadays. So when I think about masculine fragility, I think about incel culture. Think about men like Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and Andrew Tate, and even Kevin Samuels. I think that was his name, but God did us a favor, took that one. So we're good. So now we're dealing with the remaining three. Imagine all of them three in one room. It's like my worst nightmare, God forbid. But yes, we are here to talk about masculine fragility. Because maybe some of us have noticed, or maybe everyone's noticed, there's either a rise of feminism or is there a rise of acknowledgement of patriarchy? Because I think both are true. And I think both are actually the same. But what I realize is, as one rise, so does the opposition. Or is it that the opposition is rising? Because I think some people say that actually incel culture has risen first, but some people see feminism as a threat. So for them, that rises first. Someone like me, I always thought incel existed just as misogyny. Misogyny has always existed. But now we have more people who are adjusting to the idea of feminism. Women's right is no longer seen as a threat, but just a basic necessity. For those who are smart anyway. The ones who are behind, well, they're still catching up. Because, like some of us knew Andrew Tate was dangerous 5 years ago, 6 years ago, before we had kids. Some people are catching up right now when he's been accused of trafficking young women. Before that, he can preach any negativity, any hatred towards women, and we kind of normalized it, or we conditioned it. Some people said, you know what? He's honest. Like, the most important thing is you just have to follow that he talks about finance. Ignore all the rest. But how much can you ignore as human beings if you're taking in information like that, especially for the future generation, for the future young men? I don't know if any of you have watched Adolescence on Netflix. If you haven't, I definitely recommend you go and watch it. Like, honestly, especially parents who are raising boys, parents who are raising future men. You see, when we say men are trash, we are not talking about the young boys, by the way, because I know some parents get offended at that. I had a lady, he was like, I can't believe you're saying that. My son is only 2. Sister, I'm not talking about your son. He's just a boy. But the problem is, whether we like it or not, these boys are going to grow up to be men. And the current reality is that a lot of men are conditioned to be trash, especially towards women. They are raised to see women as objects rather than as equal living human beings. And I think it's so important for us to talk about the conditionings that actually adds to that. There's lots of things that adds to that. Like I said, we've got the Andrew Tate who are preaching and speaking about women as a subhuman or someone that complements a man rather than someone that stands beside a man, or even in front of sometimes, because women be leading, I'm not going to get into that about how women are the true leaders and men are really submissive. I'll definitely talk about men being really submissive. Just hold on. If you think this is shocking, just wait. Hold on. So, as I was saying, so we had the incel culture, and we have people who think that they can take in some misogynistic points, or actually rather, they can hear misogynistic perspective and just ignore it. But is that really possible? How much information can you take in on a daily basis and you decide with your brain what to take seriously and what to ignore? Especially when we're talking about adults or adolescents or young people who are up and coming, and they're so privy to all kinds of information on social media, because we can't prevent that as parents. And that's one of my worries. I have a child, I have a son. So yeah, I just want to highlight. This is why I'm very passionate about this as well, because I'm conscious of how many mothers now or parents now are raising future men's, and how many of us have struggled with a misogynistic world and have complained about it. But what are we doing to make sure that the women in the next generation don't have to encounter some of the experiences we've encountered? How are we active in it? I mean, I personally am, and I try to encourage a lot of women to fight the internalized misogyny. Internalized misogyny is when, as a woman, it's like internalized racism is encouraging something that oppresses you as a person, like a black person having very anti-black views, or colorism, perpetuating colorism, like women perpetuating misogyny. You know, sometimes you see how, for example, we have women that actually take their children to go and get female genital mutilation. That's an example of perpetuating misogyny. And sometimes you'll have mothers who actually set it up for the daughters, knowing that they went through that painful experience, and yet they still pass it on to the kids because they see it as tradition. And that actually reminds me, tradition. Tradition. What is tradition, and how far can we go with tradition? Because with tradition, there comes gender roles. And I think there's a thin line between tradition and gender roles, where we use sexism, we perpetuate misogyny and incel culture, and to say, well, that's tradition. Last time I checked, tradition can change. Tradition is whatever you decide to make it, and you pass it on. So that technically means I can make up my own tradition today. I can decide from today I am queen, and everybody has to call me queen. I mean, enforcing it will be really hard, especially in the men's world. But in my own delusion mindset, and if I start a culture and do the things that are necessary and maybe intimidate people into it, eventually I will be queen. You know, sounds like a lot of African dictators, African politicians. They enforce their power upon the people, and then it becomes a sense of tradition. And before you know it, they've been in power for over 30 years, and they're just oppressing fellow neighbors like Kagame, you know, being the black faces of imperialism. I'm so sorry I had to say that, but as a Congolese person, you can see I'm very passionate about politics as well, because it impacts all of us. But overall, what is politics? Because everything is political anyway. Whether we're talking about Andrew Tate, whether we're talking about African politicians, whether we're talking about what someone did today, what time work finishes, time, everything is political. Because that's another thing that I struggle with when I'm talking to people about these issues. They say, well, you're so political. Everything's political. The wig I'm wearing is political. The socks I'm wearing is political. Who I'm dating is political. Who I'm taught to be attracted to is political. How men see women is political. And that's why it's so important to incorporate into our kids the right politic, the right policies. I was talking about Adolescence, which is a 4-part Netflix series. And it's so important because it teaches the aspects of how misogyny is taught socially. And it also adds in little factors of how socially children are affected by what they're learning and what they're not learning. So you get this film, and it's very intense. I'm not going to lie. It's made some people feel real uncomfortable. There's been a lot of conversations going around it. I'll tell you the story without telling you too much. So there's a young man who kills his classmate, a girl. And so there's an investigation around that, whether he did it, why he did it, how he did it. And you also see the psychological aspect of it. But I think what's really important as well is that we get to see how his parents or his family actually grieve losing him to some extent. It highlights how 2 families have lost 2 children, not just one by the crime, the girl who's dead, but also one to prison or to the system because he did the killing. I personally think I would have liked to see more of the grieving family as well, because I think the victim's family also should have a big part in this, because we get to see a lot about the perpetrator. And I think sometimes crimes tend to focus on the perpetrator more than the victims. But it was important to see that, because I think there was a point being made here about how men are groomed into turning out to be misogynistic or criminals. And it could be groomed by the actions of people who actually encourage them to do it, but also it can be by lack of actions. And that's something we see quite often, because in the film, you get to see their parents really ask themselves, and this is so important for parents to do that. Like, how did we get here? You know, really assess where did he get so angry? Because a lot of us, even now, like, let's be honest with our generation and older generation, is you get mothers-in-law who are like, I didn't bring him up like this. I didn't know he was like this. Why not? Why did you know that you had an angry son? Because now your son is raising an angry son, and he doesn't know that his son is angry because he doesn't know he's angry. But you're hearing about their anger through the impact of what's been done. And so I think stuff like Adolescence gives parents an opportunity to actually assess what they're doing to contribute to the outcome of their children. Because I think as parents, we're kind of taught boys will be boys. We don't give them affection. We hear some men say, oh, the world doesn't care about men. But sometimes I think is that we try to care about men and boys to the point of their detriment, that we just assume they've got it, rather than to teach them, rather than to incorporate things, rather than to take time with them. Because we see a lot of these things as masculine. Like we see loving your children right. We see it as feminine. Like, for example, we see loving your children correctly. We're like, oh, he's a boy. Don't be hugging him like that. Don't be kissing him like that. Boys don't cry. Everybody cries. Boys, girls. And I didn't like people saying that to my son when he was young. Even now, my son loves to cry. He'll tell you, Mommy, I love to cry. I'm like, I know you do. Mommy loves to cry too. I'd be scheduling in crying time because I think that's a normal emotion. It's a normal outlet. And this probably brings me to talk about ego versus pride. Because I think we bring up men to be egotistic, to have huge egos. We don't teach them about pride enough. Oh. And let me explain the difference, because me too, I had to learn the difference. So the thing is with ego, is very self-centered, is very in your head, is what you think about yourself, how you view yourself. It can be, I can say my own definition. It can almost be paranoia, because you're assuming this is what outsiders see you, because you've had that definition of yourself and now you're assuming other people view you and experience you that way. Whereas pride is more community based. Pride can be external. It is external, actually. Pride can be based on an interaction you've had with someone, an achievement you've achieved, like going to university or having a child or having a really good day or getting a certificate. You've got a sense of pride, and this is why people say, I'm proud of you. And I think too often we teach men to have ego and not enough about how to be proud of themselves, how to do things that bring in a sense of pride, because we're so busy teaching them that they are important and other people should see them as important, when actually we're all important. And if we highlighted that more often, then maybe boys and men would interact with women as if they're coming across people who are also important as them. And maybe we'll have less talks of submission, like women should be submission. Anyone that knows me knows I hate that stuff. I'm not religious anyway. I just got to put it out there. For my religious folks, I'm really sorry. But even within religion, I think there's so many things that we say that are dangerous for women. Dangerous because we condition women to be accepting of abuse, and we condition men to think abuse is normal or is a sense of tradition or is their right. So when we say stuff like, and mostly it's not even true. We say stuff like, oh, women are naturally submissive. I'm not going to lie. I disagree. I'm going to say something here, yeah. And your cognitive dissonance or dissonance, whatever accent you're getting, you know what I mean, might kind of play a trick on you. Please don't be offended. Just hear me out. I genuinely think that men are naturally more submissive than women. Hear me out. The reason why I say this is because I think there is no one that follows a man's lead more than a man. Whereas we spend so long trying to get women to follow men's lead and then telling women to teach men how to lead. Where's the sense? Whereas men just so easily follow men. And we see that in society. Have you ever seen the way even a pastor would justify a man cheating? How did he follow that lead? You are a pastor. You're meant to talk about how your body is a temple, because a man's body is a temple too, right? He shouldn't be just sleeping around with his temple and uselessing other temples, women. But no, but they go, oh, a man's weakness. See that defense? You're following lead. When we look at gang cultures, do you know how much submission it takes in gang cultures? Boys calling each other, yeah, I've got beef here, I've got beef there. Yeah, I'm going to ride for my boys. We hear that a lot. Loyalty. Constant submitting. There's so many people who went to jail for something they didn't do or something they could have said they didn't do because they were so submissive towards other men. They were loyal to the point of detriment, and they barely extend that to women. And so men really show women how to be submissive, but they get so angry that women tend to rebel, or women want to have a mind of their own. So we spend so long saying women are naturally submissive whilst men act very naturally submissive. Let me tell you something. Yesterday, sorry, let me take a sip. Oh, I need me some rum. Yesterday, I was watching 24 Hours in Police Custody, the Channel 4 documentary, yeah. I was watching that, and it was quite sad because it was about two people who have lost their lives and one person who would survive, but technically 2 murders, 1 attempted murder, and I think this was in Bedford, and obviously the police were investigating it. But if you see how everything happened in such a rush and heightened anger and emotions, and how one guy's fight influenced other people to get involved to the point where 3 lives are damaged, well, 2 are lost, 1 is damaged, you just think, but hold on, if you just took a moment and you just paused, or if the person that got involved just said, what am I doing this for? Like, who are we beating up? Who are we trying to kill? Why are we trying to kill them? If you just took a second to actually reflect rather than act upon your anger, because that's what we teach men. That's ego. Your anger is so important. You get people to do what you want them to do. You lead this. You listen to each other. You follow each other. The way I was watching this episode, as they're investigating it, and you're seeing the CCTV, and this was actually horrific, because you see how a fight that was something small that happened in a pub escalated to behind like the roads, some people getting stabbed, and then one person who was stabbed was then run over, dragged by the car. And you see this on CCTV, and you just think, this is from so much anger. And then what's actually so sad is when they actually got the suspects in and the potential, what do you call them? Potential murderers. When they've got them in a police cell or the interview room, the interrogation room, and they're speaking to them, and then they're showing them like the footages of the things that took place. You can see from their face in a millisecond, even the sociopaths or psychopaths, in a millisecond, you see the regret. You see the shock, even in the gang members that didn't do anything but did come to the scene. You see the shock, and you see a moment of reflection. And you just think, if we just took those moments there, the moments of, and we just say, that's the moment I want you to have before you commit the act. That's the moment I want you to think. You are allowed to have that moment as men. You don't always have to think that being sensible equals to being feminine. Because being sensible saves everybody, even those men's lives. Because one of the guys, yeah, and the main guy, the other thing, one of the times where he showed the most emotion actually was when he had to give consent for his daughter to go to foster care because it's just her and him. And that was the only time he cried. But if you saw how he was reacting to being told that 2 people had died from his actions and 1 almost died, and them showing him the footages, there was almost nothing there. And just no comment, no comment, no comment. But he cried when he was talking to his daughter and explaining to her that, she's going to go to foster care or foster homes. I don't know what's the appropriate term. And you just think, if we just allowed men to cater to those moments more, so it's not an intervention, so it is more prevention before we get to the intervention, how much more lives can we save? How much more lives can we save if we teach men that actually tap into your softness? That saves you. It saves a village. It saves people around you. Because it's not just the people that died that are affected. It's their family members. It's their children. The guy who was like dragged by the car, he had a child. And it was so sad to see the video at the end of him and his daughter. Like, how are you going to explain that to a child and how they lost their father? Because some men just thought too big of themselves. They were so caught up in their ego. They were being masculine. The masculinity was so fragile that at that moment, the ego was the most important thing, that they forgot that there were fathers and partners and brothers and children. They forgot about everyone else involved but themselves, because at that moment, the ego is just up there. And this is why, for me, it's so important for us as parents, as society, to tackle early, like I said, prevention over intervention. How we're bringing up our sons. Challenge masculinity. Challenge the fragility of it. Challenge people like Andrew Tate, Trump, Elon Musk. If you associate manlyhood to money and someone's got money, then they automatically become this masculine coach. And also, that's a scam. Anybody who's a masculine or feminine coach, they're just scamming people, because masculine and femininity is something that everybody has. Everybody has feminine and masculine energy. Some people have more, some people have more than others, some people have less than others. It doesn't matter if you're a woman, if you're a man, if you're male, you're female. There are women who have more masculine energy than men. There are men who have more feminine energy than women. It's just individualism. And I think people should indulge on whatever level they have and strengthen that with wisdom, rather than thinking, oh, he's too feminine, he needs to be masculine. What does that even mean? Nobody knows what it means, but it sounds provocative. It's actually a bunch of nonsense. People have to be themselves and be the best version of themselves, rather than trying to make everybody be a certain standard, rather than trying to make everybody be a copy of one thing. And let's be honest, if we're going to be a copy of one thing, it's not Andrew Tate that we need in this world, please. It's not. Please, I don't want to be in this world. If it doesn't Andrew Tate in the future, I'm not coming back to life. This reincarnation thing, I'll say, please, I beg, I want nothing to do with this. And I'm trying to be sure that as a mum, I'm raising children who would oppose what Andrew Tate stands for. A child who grows up to be a man and says, yeah, I'm a feminist. Are you not a feminist? Like, we need to become so ashamed about questioning people about being feminist. We need to be embarrassed to not be a feminist, because why are you not pro-women? Like, where's the sense in why don't you like other people's basic rights? It's like saying, do you want Palestine to be free? Do you want a free Congo? Why would you not? Like, do you want people to have basic human rights and be safe? That's how crazy the question is. But you can make these questions so controversial if you are encouraging masculine fragility. And so important for us to tackle it, to challenge it.
Trish, just an audience question. What exactly would you say Andrew Tate stands for, and what is it that you think people should stay away from? Can you clarify that a little bit more?
I think it's really hard to say that Andrew Tate actually stands for something. My point is, he stands for nothing at all. But what he pretends to stand for is, I think it's a facade. It's an imagination of what he thinks being masculine or being a man represents, in a way that makes him the biggest person in the room, in a way that makes him in control of others. Because I think masculine fragility is never about controlling yourself, but having control of others. And I think that's where the problem is to not hold yourself accountable, but to try to control how others behave, how they're perceived, how they act. And I think that's actually lack of control. And I think, to be honest, Andrew Tate, he definitely has some trauma in there. I've seen a video of him once talk about his father, and saying that his father wasn't around. But then he went on to say, yeah, but fathers don't need to be around, because fathers don't need to be there. It needs to be the mother, and he was almost normalizing it. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's a father wound. Like, he's got daddy issues, but he doesn't see a daddy issues because he doesn't realize that actually, as a man, he can be disposable to men as well. I think the thought of that is so painful that he doesn't want to grasp it. So he'll rather think that actually this is what's supposed to happen. And a lot of cultures come from that. So when we talk about culture and tradition and reinforcing them, we also have to be mindful that sometimes we're just reinforcing a culture or tradition that came up because someone was insecure. A man couldn't do a certain thing and said, well, it's meant to be done that way anyway. And then everybody just passes it on. Nobody's challenging it. At what point do we say, actually, even if that tradition worked 20 years ago, it's not working now? You got to remember, at some point, slavery, colonization, all of that, like selling your daughters, trafficking, all of these are some people's tradition. They were, and they still are in certain parts of the country. The same with female genital mutilation. A lot of these harmful ideologies can be people's tradition, but we have to challenge them because we're progressing forward. And I know progressive is probably an incel's worst word, or someone with a ego or fragile masculinity. I don't know if am I answering? I realized I just went off for one. Did I answer that? Oh, you're So, yeah. So we're coming to the end of that. I think I have talked your ear off enough. I hope you guys learned something from that, because I feel like I was really giving you guys like, I was giving you guys bars and knowledge and days. Like, I don't want to big myself up too much, but I think I did my thing there. And if anybody has any questions or any input or something that you think I can go more deep into, I may do lives on some of the social medias. I don't know which one yet. I'll let you know once I know myself. Thank you for tuning in with me, guys. I hope I see you again next time. Remember, guys, to like, comment, share, support, leave your perspective at us. And I think I said subscribe. Make sure you subscribe. Did I say subscribe? Yes, said subscribe. You can't say I didn't say it. Thank you guys for tuning in to Talk to Trish podcast, and we'll see you again next time. I just want to take a moment to thank our sponsors. As you can see, this beautiful big studio space is Mike Mojo, who sponsors us. Thank you so much. They are located in Brixton, which is easily accessible, and it's got a vibrant energy to it. And also, it's just nice and beautiful. And Mike Mojo is funded by LITC. LITC, they are an enterprise who empowers young people through education. And another one of our sponsors is the Revolutionary Clothings. As you can see, is giving revolution, is given quotes by me, is given a wise woman once said. And last but not least, Dark Side Rum Punch. Another sponsors. This is made of a fusion of Caribbean from founders who are from both Dominica and Jamaica. It's got that slap your chest type of stick, the one that makes you talk a lot of nonsense sense, if that makes sense. And guys, remember, you can get 20% off your first order. 20% off as long as you use the code Trish in capital, respect my name. 20% off, use the code Trish on your first order for the Dark Side Rum Punch. Thank you for tuning in again, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.
Baby, I'm an icon. I'm an icon.